RuBru means face-to-face in the Urdu language. If you are a Muslim, the RuBru-ftf series can help you find your bearings on where Muslims stand today in relation to their recent past. All viewers may find many of the misconceptions floating around, corrected by the information the RuBru-ftf series supplies. DMSR stands for Do Muslims Still Regress? West's journey to enlightenment is frequently discussed in relation to Muslims' recent past and present. Therefore, it needs to be revisited in relation to our basic theme. DMSR 4.2 presents a brief summary of the European religious wars. The European wars of religion were a number of wars waged in Europe from the 16th to the 17th century. The violence that followed the Protestant Reformation of the 16th century disrupted the religious order and impacted the political environment in the Catholic countries of Europe. After Martin Luther's initiation of the Reformation in 1517, Calvinism emerged in Geneva in the 1540s. The Reformation in Zurich and northern Switzerland, led by Zwingli and Heinrich Bullinger, combined with Jean van Calvinism to create what we now know as Reformed Protestantism. The followers of this belief system were quite militant, and the way the organization was structured also led to militarization. Protestants' preparation to face Catholic force with force set the stage for European religious wars. The main religious wars included the French Wars, wars between Spain and the Netherlands, British participation in religious wars, and the 30 Years' War. The Reformation, launched by Martin Luther in 1517, reached France in 1521. The Reformation was not received as enthusiastically as it was welcomed in the Germanic territories. Tensions between Protestants and Catholics started in 1534, and the religious situation worsened gradually. The French religious wars started in 1562 and continued for about 36 years. The wars were mainly fought between French Catholics and French Protestants or Huguenots. Queen Elizabeth I of England, a Protestant, and King Philip II of Spain, a Catholic, contributed financially and militarily to these wars. The armed conflict continued through 1598, when it was concluded by the Edict of Nantes. It is estimated that as many as 4 million people may have died in the French wars of religion. The First Religious War in France, 1562 to 1563, began after the bloodbath in Vassy. The war ended after the Edict of Pacification was signed, which was later violated by the king, leading to the subsequent wars. The Eighth War, 1594 to 1598, lasted longer than previous wars and ended with King Henry III's murder. Henry IV, King of France, recognizing that France would not accept a Protestant monarch, converted to Catholicism and, in 1598, issued the Edict of Nantes, formally ending the French wars of religion. Henry IV was assassinated in 1610 by a Catholic zealot. Religious tensions would continue throughout the next century. The failure of the two factions to come to a mutual understanding contributed to France's entry in 1635 into the 30 Years' War, 1618 to 1648, one of the most devastating conflicts in European history. Spanish King Philip II, who reigned from 1556 to 98, was a staunch defender of Catholicism. He tried to impose religious control on his foreign possession, the Netherlands. An unsuccessful revolt of 1567 to 1568 in the Netherlands had started guerrilla warfare on land and sea by Calvinist diehards, which triggered years of constant warfare. In 1588, the Dutch provinces in the north declared their independence from Spain. The Dutch Republic became a staunch Protestant and a strong ally of Anglican England. Spain maintained a costly military campaign against the Republic till the end of the 30 Years' War in 1648. England supported the Dutch Protestants, engaged in war with Spain. In 1588, the Spanish Armada of 132 warships was engaged in a sea battle with England in the English Channel, finally returning after losing half of its ships and thousands of men. A Spanish threat to England and to the Anglican Church ended permanently. Spain's bankruptcy was the result of its costly wars, which made it a second-tier power in 1700. Never again did Spain play a dominant role in European politics. The 30 Years' War started because of a religious disagreement between German Roman Catholics and Protestants, but it soon became part of the power struggle within the Holy Roman Empire. It also turned into a political conflict, with Catholic Austrian and Spanish Habsburg rulers competing against Protestant leaders from Denmark and Sweden and later against Catholic France. In the beginning, the uneasy truce between the Catholic Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, who had limited power outside of his own ancestral, Habsburg, lands, and the numerous Protestant princes of mostly northern territories was shaken. The Catholic-Protestant wars in France and the Netherlands fueled the unrest, and the attempted murder of Catholic imperial officials by Protestant nobles in Prague contributed to the end of the Truce. 74. The Bohemian Diet, a parliament of nobles, renounced its allegiance to the emperor and pledged support to a Protestant prince. Attacks and counterattacks started, which eventually resulted in a full-scale war. From 1620 to 29, the Catholics won major battles against the Protestants. In 1629, the emperor issued an edict demanding the return of all church land seized since the Reformation, which was in the hands of different states for about 80 years. It fueled the ongoing war. In 1630, the Swedish king, Adolphus, received financial support from the French to oppose the Habsburgs. Adolphus invaded Germany in 1630 and won a major victory against Catholic forces in 1631. In 1635, the French entered the war on the Protestant side. The element of the dynastic struggle between the Bourbons of France and the Habsburgs of Austria entered the scene. The war extended well beyond Germany, and the follow-up wars took place between France and Spain after 1648. A quote from Karen Armstrong's book, The Battle for God, Fundamentalism in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, appears to be appropriate here. In her words, "These were the frightening times for the people of the West on both sides of the Atlantic. The Reformation had been a fearful rupture, dividing Europe into vicious, hostile camps. Protestants and Catholics had persecuted one another in England. There had been civil war in France between Protestants and Catholics, 1562 to 1563, and nationwide massacre of Protestants in 1572. The 30-Year War, 1618 to 1648, devastated Europe, drawing in one nation after another, a powerful struggle with a strong religious dimension which killed any hope of a reunited Europe. There was political unrest also. In 1642, England was convulsed by a civil war that resulted in the execution of King Charles, 1649, and the establishment of a republic under the Puritan parliamentarian Oliver Cromwell. When the monarchy was restored in 1660, its powers were curtailed by the Parliament. More democratic institutions were painfully and bloodily emerging in the West. Even more catastrophic was the French Revolution 1789, which was succeeded by a reign of terror and military dictatorship, before the order was restored by Napoleon. The quote from Armstrong's book ends here. The 30 Years' War was the most devastating religious conflict in European history in the middle of the Holy Roman Empire. It saw a reduction of population in German land by about 20 to 40%. It produced horrific acts of violence, the greatest loss of life, and the painful suffering among soldiers and civilians. The war racked Europe. Neither Catholics nor Protestants won, but millions died, and intolerance ran amok. In short, the European religious wars of the 16th to 18th centuries were a series of devastating conflicts that ravaged the continent, leaving deep scars on its social, cultural, and economic fabric. The 30 Years' War, 1618 to 1648, the 80 Years' War, 1568 to 1648, and the Wars of the Three Kingdoms, 1639 to 1653, are just a few examples of the brutal and relentless struggles that pitted Christians against Christians. These conflicts resulted in unprecedented human suffering. The widespread destruction, massacres, and forced migrations left a lasting impact on European society, leading to a re-evaluation of the role of religion in politics and the emergence of modern nation-states. The 30-Year War ended with the Treaty of Westphalia in 1648, which curbed the tendency for colonization within Europe. However, after this achievement, Europe continued with its greatest colonization in human history in the rest of the world. It is a significant fact that there is no record of violent religious wars in any religion to the scale of European religious wars between Christians. The sheer scale, duration, and intensity of the European religious wars, which spanned over 2 centuries, are unparalleled in human history. While other religions have experienced conflicts and violence, none have approached the magnitude of the Christian-on-Christian violence that ravaged Europe during the Reformation and Counter-Reformation.